Thank you for tuning in. It's time for a blaster review. I was lucky enough to get some cool stuff for Christmas. This is the relatively recent Busby Air Warriors Revolution. Note, it doesn't say, as far as I can tell, it doesn't say ultra-tek, which was their, I don't know, subline of Air Warriors. It's been kind of a weird time for Busby lately because, for the most part, Busby blasters, as far as I know, have not been appearing in their own name in abundance on retail store shelves. You might find a few Air Warriors blasters at Target, and at Walmart you won't find a single thing that says Busby Toys or Air Warriors on it. Instead, what you'll find is Adventure Force, which is Adventure Force is comprised of blasters by Busby, but also Dart Zone and Zuru X-Shot. So Busby, I kind of feel like they're struggling to get the recognition they deserve for some decent products anymore. This is the Revolution, and in the holidays, some discount stores such as Marshalls and TJ Maxx, or in this case, Ross Dress for Less, stock toys, and this one was purchased. Well, okay, it was purchased for me, but the person who purchased it paid $7.99, which is pretty good for a magazine-fed top prime pistol that probably will shoot as good as or better than the Nerf competition. So let's get into the box. There were all of two snips holding this in. With this package, you get the blaster itself, you get a magazine, which appears to be an 8-dart magazine as indicated by the number there, and you get 8 of the Busby long-distance darts. Now, the interesting thing here is usually Nerf competitors such as Busby X-Shot and Dart Zone often give you more darts than the blaster can use at a single time. This time, you're only getting the bare minimum. It's interesting. It's not a deal breaker because, as I said, this thing was only $8 for the whole package, and for the most part, most of us are going to have an abundance of darts already on hand, and Busby long distance darts are nothing to write home about. So if I was going to be running this blaster, I would be using something like AccuFakes or waffle tip darts. Let's get into the blaster itself. It's a little bit wobbly. You can hear the prime rocking back and forth a little bit. A lot of times when you're using a blaster, you're going to be running around. It's a pretty active hobby for most of us. So to hear that rattling a little bit is annoying, but again, not a deal breaker. Let's get into the grip and the comfort. Busby has had a problem lately with small grips on certain blasters, such as this Exact Attack, which they produced for the Adventure Force line. This has a tiny grip. You can only put 2 fingers on here. Your pinky basically has to wrap around bottom. But we're not here to review the Exact Attack, we're here to review the Revolution, and I'm pleased to report that this basically has enough room for what I'm going to guess is the majority of hands. I am a fairly large individual, and I have large hands, and this is honestly very comfortable. The one thing that might give me trouble over time is the angle going from here across to the flat part of the grip. It's a little bit sharp, it's not rounded, and over time, using this all day, it might wear on the fingers a little bit, but it's good so far. Alright, let's load up some of our Busby long-distance darts that were included in the package. Alright, those load nicely. You know what, honestly, you might be able to fit a 9th dart in here, but I'm not going to try. That goes right in there, just as you'd expect. Prime forward, feels normal, and the action of the Busby blaster feels basically completely as expected for any of you who have used such a Busby blaster before. Now let's talk a little bit about the aesthetics and the appearance of this blaster. In the past, Busby have often had blasters that are a combination of some shade of blue, sometimes green. You'll get a lot of yellow on their blasters. Historically, I personally have not really cared for their combination of blue and yellow. Their green, honestly, it kind of hit or miss, but I like most of their green. I think the thing that I don't really like is their yellow. This one includes blue, orange, and black, and I'll be honest, I think this is a striking, really attractive appearance for a blaster. This just looks fantastic, this combination of colors. Now granted, if you're in a Nerf, you've probably seen this combination of colors on the Nerf Elite line before, so it's nothing new, but it looks really good. Now one thing that's notable with the appearance as well is, unfortunately, like the major name brand, they've only put the blaster name on one side. This panel here is completely blank. That's unfortunate. One thing that is important to many people is performance. So let's get an idea of how well this blaster shoots. We're going to do the Busby long distance darts first, since that's what it came with. Alright, so I fired off 8 long distance darts. We got an average of 76 feet a second. That is a bit hotter than you'll find on a Nerf Elite Blaster on the whole, which shoot around 70. This will be probably slightly noticeable, but not a huge advantage. It's good to know that somebody putting out a competitor to Nerf can shoot harder than Nerf. However, what you're probably going to be using, as I mentioned before, are something more like AccuFakes or waffle tips. So we're going to run some of those darts through this blaster as well. Okay, this magazine is currently loaded with a combination of waffle tips and AccuFakes. Basically, what I personally would be using if I was in a standard Nerf war, or if I was in something like HVZ. Unfortunately, that was a little more disappointing than the long distance darts. Our average here was only 65.1 feet a second, and some of them were as low as 57.7 with a high of 77. So that's kind of a big spread. Again, if you're up against stock Nerf Elite blasters, you probably wouldn't notice too much difference one way or the other. But if you're in a super stock war with a lot of modded things, you will probably find that this is not quite as adequate as you would like. As I was doing my firing testing, one of the things I noticed that was to my liking is actually the magazine is actually feeding really nice and smoothly, which is either a sign that I'm used to worn out magazines, or that perhaps Busby has improved their magazine somewhat. But the action of the follower moving up and down is honestly really pleasant with this magazine. One other thing that I can point out is Busby, I believe, has started implementing their linkable magazines anymore. So there are connector points on either side where you can do Jungle magazine, I believe it's called. So if I had another one of these, I could clasp it on with the opening at the other end, and I could actually stack them to any length that I wanted or that was realistic. One other thing I wanted to talk about is the compatibility of the Busby magazine with Nerf blasters and the compatibility of Nerf magazines with the Busby blasters. Historically, pretty much any Nerf brand magazine has been usable in most Busby blasters, with a few exceptions, usually involving something like a 35 round drum, where the bulbous part of the magazine would be too big to insert into the mag well. So I have here a Nerf 35 round drum. I actually still like using these, although usually I have to replace the spring. I think that this magwell is going to have plenty of clearance, and it does. That goes in there perfectly fine. It's a little weird looking. It's maybe a little oddly balanced, but it's definitely going to be functional. Now, I don't have a whole lot of Nerf brand blasters at my disposal, but let's examine quickly the question of, can I use this Busby magazine in a Nerf blaster? And I'm certain that the answer is going to be yes. And as expected, that goes in something like a Retaliator perfectly fine. So, as a bottom line, I guess the question would be, is this blaster worth your time and your money? I would say if you do not already have blasters such as a Retaliator by Nerf, or possibly some previous blasters by Busby, then it is definitely worth your $8, because this is about as cheap as you can get for something that will take interchangeable magazines and allow you to get a lot of shots off on the field. The one case where this might not be worth it is if you have something similar already. In particular, I feel it's worthwhile to point out the lineage of the Busby revolution. So some of the more recent examples, but not all of them, include the Eradicator, which was released under the Adventure Force line at Walmart, the Tactical Storm, which came out around the same time as the Eradicator, but technically has a different shell from the Eradicator. There are small differences, such as with this iron sight. The Busby Reaper, which probably came out, I would say maybe 2017, I'm not sure. And even before the Busby Reaper, you had the Busby Champion. The Champion, I'm not sure, but I think this is the first one that I know of that was in the Retaliator overall form, where you have a top prime and you have it magazine fed, although you have some other ones. But this is an early example, and I'll be honest, if it came down to which one of these many blasters would I use in a war given what I have now, I might actually still go with the Champion. The reason being, the Champion, while a similar form factor, I guess just maybe it's I'm just used to it, but it feels better in the hand. And the Champion, I mentioned before, this has kind of an abrupt angle going around the grip. The Champion is curved and it feels so perfect. The Champion's grip is one of my favorites. It's hard to beat. That is not to say that I will not be using the Revolution, because I still like it. It looks phenomenal, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun. Also, I probably didn't mention this before, but the performance of basically all of these Busby blasters tends to be roughly the same, because they all have basically the same internals, with a little bit of tweaking here and there to make them fit different shapes of shells. Well, I hope you've really enjoyed watching this as much as I've enjoyed making it. Thank you very much again for tuning in. If you are not already a subscriber, I would encourage you to click in the circle, which would let you subscribe easily. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Can It Take a... No, wait, wrong program.